Hey, everybody, welcome back to another All Things MSP Live. We're doing something a little bit different tonight. And of course, just as I started the show, you know, my cough kicks up. In case you didn't know, I did have COVID last week, which is why we had kind of a rerun episode. And, forgive me for that. But tonight is also going to be a little bit different. And give me a second because I'm just going to grab my water. Which also appears to be somewhat empty, but that's okay because I have a spare. Okay, so don't worry. Tonight's episode is going to be a little bit different because we're going to be doing a workshop. On our last truly live episode, we did a presentation on building accountability in your small business. And so what I wanted to do with tonight was to go through a workshop of how I approach building my system for building that accountability for myself. And I thought it would be helpful to go through the process because one of the things that I truly believe is that this process is probably going to look different for everybody. And so I'm hoping that, I'll be able to show you some things that might work for you, but more importantly, help to show you a way of building the system that will work for you. And that's kind of where we're going with this tonight. Again, we're trying something new, trying a workshop format rather than slides. And so really hoping that you guys find this valuable. This is part of a series that we're going to do. Not going to do it in a row because I do have some guests coming up. So we're going to, do some guests in between here, but I do hope to share some of the things that I've learned over the years of trying to consistently kind of fix my productivity system. And I believe that that really starts with building your accountability system. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I do have, I use Miro, which I definitely recommend this product. I pay for it. And it is one of the whiteboarding type of softwares that are out there. And it's the one that I like the most. It's not free. It does cost something, but it is definitely worth it. One of the things I do want to say, though, before we get started is that if you are joining tonight on LinkedIn, I really would recommend heading over to either Facebook or YouTube. YouTube's probably the easiest place to find us because I am going to be asking you guys questions tonight because I want this to be more of an interactive session rather than me just telling you how I did it, because I think it's more important to get the different opinions in different ways that might have worked for you, or just giving me some ideas as to things that I should add while we're going through this process. Okay. I do also want to give a shout out to our sponsor of tonight's episode. It's Produce 8. And they want you to know that knowledge workers are losing over 2 hours daily to collaboration overload and digital distractions. MSPs can help fix this trillion-dollar problem because MSPs are uniquely placed to provide essential technology services, and a lot of the productivity of knowledge workers really revolves around all of the technology and the tools that they use every day. And so now as an MSP, you can empower your clients with digital work analytics to enhance that productivity. And one of the things I love about Produce 8 is that it's not a monitoring software. Okay. What it does is it more provides a digital coach to the employees and then provides anonymized data to the organization so they can see overall how the organization is doing rather than spying on an individual employee. So definitely something that I think you should check out if you are really in the phase of helping your clients become more productive through technology. I think that Produce 8 is something that you really should take a look at. You can head on over to atmsp.link/produce8, and they will gladly give you all of the answers, book a demo, show you how it works, how you can actually create revenue by helping your clients become more productive. It's really cool. We've done some demos of the product. They're on the YouTube channel, so if you want to, you can definitely check those out. All right, so back to the show. Definitely, if you are joining tonight, this is meant to be more interactive. It is more of a workshop. Let me go ahead and see. I do need to provide, let's see. Got to provide the right one. Oh. All right. Now I just have to put everything back in the right place so I can see it, especially that chat window. I want to make sure that I can see the chat window because we are going to be more interactive tonight. And in terms of that, if you are not joined on YouTube or Facebook, you probably want to jump over there because that's where you'll be able to see the comments that I've put in, as well as interact and leave your own comments so that we can do this as a team. All right. Let me go ahead and add that. Okay. So tonight's workshop is basically on building self-discipline. And I've broken that up into a couple of different segments. The first is goals, creating goals, because it doesn't really help to create habits or routines if you don't have goals that align with those habits and those routines. So that's our starting point. And then we're going to do habits and routines. I'm going to show you how I do it. I learned it, I think in a book. I forget which book. A lot of these are not my original ideas. These are just things that I have found over the years. And then we're going to go to tracking. Tracking is essential because if you're not measuring your habits, you're not going to be able to see your progress in terms of activity to get to your goals. And then, of course, you need to be tracking your goals as well. So that's important. And then learning, just really kind of have a comment on the learning piece at the end. I do have a couple of suggestions that you might want to look into if you haven't already. And then I do have a little bit after that on what the next segment is going to be in terms of productivity. Because I think once you have your self-discipline system in place, now we need to pick up a productivity system, again, that works for the individual, so that we can actually get the work done. This is more about creating consistency in your goals and the habits that are going to get you there. But then, we're going to need a productivity system that not only helps you with the goal tracking and things like that, but also helps you with all of the interrupts, all of the things that come into your inbox that have nothing to do with your goals, because they still have to be dealt with, right? There's still things outside of your goals that you need to work on. Okay, let's see what we got here. A couple of things to keep in mind as you're going through this, okay? And that is keep your processes simple. One of the biggest problems that I see people get into, and by the way, I was guilty of this as well, is not making your processes simple. Because if they're not simple, you're not going to follow them. The best example that I can come up with from my personal experience is bullet journaling. I came up with some really fancy bullet journals. And if you don't know what a bullet journal is, I'm going to be showing that a little bit later in the show, because I think that kind of lends to the productivity system side of things. But you could be doing this. You could get a complicated app. One of the problems with using apps is a lot of times they're not built for the way you want to work. And they include lots of things that you don't need. So that overcomplicates the process of using that to-do app or that calendar app or whatever it is. And then don't copy, create, because what works for somebody else may not work for you. So you can steal their idea, but only steal it if it works for you And please, please feel free to modify it to work the way you work rather than the way that somebody else works. Because one of the keys to self discipline and productivity is coming up with a system that works for you, that is unique to, the way you think, the way you work, the times you work. All of those different things come into creating a system that is specific for you. And then again, based on the simplicity mindset, start with one habit. Um, the routines are a little bit different, but if there's a habit that you're trying to change, that's something that I think you should start with one, get successful at that one, especially if it's a big habit, right? Smaller habits, you might be able to do a couple at a time. But with large habits, make sure that you're doing one at a time. Just keep it simple, keep your focus down. And again, this is for me, right? These are the things that have worked for me because I have problems focusing on too many things at once. So adding one new habit at a time to my structure, to my system, to my routines is something that I try and do, because I know if I add more, then I'm not going to be able to focus on getting that one accomplished. And they say, it takes anywhere from 30 to 90 days to establish a new habit. Again, that depends on the person. Okay, so SMART goals, and this is where we're actually going to start turning this into a workshop. What I'd like to do is, if you guys have any ideas of a specific goal that is relevant to being an MSP, being an MSP business owner, this doesn't have to be about the business. It can be, but something that's relevant to being a business owner of an MSP or being a leader in an MSP, go ahead and start putting those in the chat for me, and I'll pick one. And if you guys don't give me one, I'm going to have to pick myself, and that might make this more boring. So just pick a goal out of the air that you think we should use for this example in the workshop tonight. And if I had Jeopardy music, I would be playing it right now. Oh, and by the way, if you joined later and you don't know what I'm talking about, and I probably should go ahead and bring up Facebook so that I can see any comments. So give me just a second. But one of the nice things about StreamYard, and if you guys aren't familiar with what we're using here to stream, I do use StreamYard, and that allows me to see comments from both Facebook and LinkedIn. Actually, it's LinkedIn that I need to look at, not Facebook, because the ones from Facebook I can see. All right. Let me go ahead and mute that. Okay, so no comments so far on LinkedIn. I don't have any yet from the other channels. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and pick one. Okay, so an MSP owner or business leader, probably something, let's see, something that's relative to the industry, to the business, maybe to management. Let's just say that you want to raise your yeah, well, see, Degley, you can see I'm not having much luck myself either. I'm thinking like MRR, increasing your MRR might be something that is relatively common. There's obviously a myriad of health goals that we could go with. Management goals, we could start out with something like making sure that you're doing one-on-ones, or that you're doing, you want to start a performance review program. Let's go ahead with that one. Let's say we want to start performance reviews with our employees. So specifically, we want to start I should probably make this font a whole lot smaller. Well, let me do, won't let me do just that. Okay, so start performance. And if I could type, this would be much easier. This is probably going to be the biggest bane to doing this is going to be my typing ability. Start performance reviews for all employees. So the M stands for measurable. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, this is measurable. Now, this is not measurable necessarily by a KPI. But we could say we want 100%. So we could do it that way. That is a number we could throw in here. And it does make it more specific. So that's also good. So 100% of employees reviewed in 6 months. And I'm going to use that 6 months for a reason here, because I'm also probably going to get out on a soapbox for a second and talk about performance reviews. So just bear with me there. Achievable. This one, I don't even know that this one is really quite as relevant for this one, because it is absolutely achievable unless you have a ton of employees. That's the one that's going to be tough here. But for the average MSP, I'm going to say that this is relatively easy in terms of achievability. Relevant. Why is this relevant to the business? Because setting expectations, following up, and rewarding performance will benefit the business. So that's why it's relevant, because doing these performance reviews are actually going to improve the performance of the business overall, because I'm setting the right expectations with my employees. I'm following up with them on a regular basis to make sure that they have everything that they need to either meet or exceed those expectations, and then rewarding the performance at the end for meeting or exceeding those expectations will help with the culture of the business. Now, the last one is time bound, and I already put this in the measurable, right? So I'm going to give myself 6 months. Now, the importance here is that you are not vague in what the goal is, right? You want to start performance reviews for all employees. And if I wanted to be even more specific, I probably could have included a little bit about why it's relevant up there in the S portion, in the specific portion. The measurability is important. And the more specific you can be in the measurability, the better that is. So that's why I wanted to add numbers to this. 100% of employees reviewed. And I probably didn't need to put the 6 months here. It's almost redundant because it's down in the time bound. Relevancy is important because you want to make sure that when you're setting goals, they're aligned to the overall business strategy. Okay. Or the personal strategy. This is a personal goal. Say this was a personal goal for losing weight. The relevance to losing weight is it's going to improve your overall health. Right. And then time bound, if you don't put a time limit on a goal, especially if you are a procrastinator like I am, it is just going to drag out and drag out and drag out. And the other important thing about time bound is that when we get into the productivity side of things, you're going to need to be able to set annual, quarterly, monthly, weekly, even down to sometimes the day actions that you're going to take to get to that goal in 6 months, because that 6 months isn't just something you can start the day before the 6 months is over. You have to have a plan for getting this done, getting the individual actions done that are going to get you to this goal, starting way ahead so that you can complete it by the time that you've set for it to end. Okay, so that's how I would go about figuring out what my goals are. And personally, what I would do is start out with the probably 3 goals, because I think that we all have at least 3 areas of our life that we want to improve on. Okay. You want something for your business or for your work. You want something for your personal, probably health related, right? Because most of us, especially um, us Americans, we're pretty bad at that. And so there's some goals for that. I have personal goals for that. My personal goal right now is to be able to run 2.5 miles without having to stop. Um, I'm not doing great at that goal, but I've gone from running about 4 minutes to 2 minute runs in 2.5 miles to doing it up to 6 or 7 times in that 2.5 miles. So again, making progress. It's measurable, right? Because I can count the number of times that I'm running for 2 minutes at a time. And as I build up, more and more percentage of that run is going to be running rather than walking. So anyway, and for a third one, if you've got a side hustle, something like that, you may have goals there. And it doesn't have to be 3, it can be 4. And annual goals are you're probably going to have more of them. In terms of weekly goals, you're probably going to have less of them. And it's going to go everywhere in between. But again, start as simple as possible that makes sense, and then grow it from there. Build your process first. So that's one of the reasons why I say start with 1 a lot of times. 1, 2, 3, whatever you think you can handle, is because when you're doing this initially, you're going to be starting and building your process first. And you don't want to be building your process while trying to do 5, 6, 7 goals. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. So we go from goals to routines, and this is the one where we're probably going to spend a little bit more time, because this is the one that has probably helped me out the most. And I realize that this is probably very personal to me, just because of the way my mind works and the ADHD tendencies that I believe I have. I've never been officially diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I fall in that spectrum. And basically what I've got here, and I'm going to move these out of the way for the moment. And let's see, let me move in on this. What I've done, and you could do this in any different way, but I've set it up with 5 different sets of routines that I want to make sure that I do every day. Okay. And let me get it out of presentation mode here so I can pull in some text. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Actually, if you guys can let me know, oh, I should have started typing first. If you can see this, if this is large enough on your screen, or if I need to make this a little bit bigger, go ahead and comment for me and let me know that. Okay, so I've got one index card, and I literally do this on index cards. I have, they're actually out of arm's reach at the moment, but I have these on individual cards that I do have, that I reference every single day, because part of this, again, is building habits. And I want to make sure that I'm consistent in doing these things every day to make sure that I am starting my day well, personally, starting my work day well, taking time out in the middle of my day to get certain things accomplished, and then again, ending my work day well, ending my personal day well. So, morning routine. This is something you know, that is going to be very personal to you because it really depends on what you do, how your life works out, and the things that are important to you. So the first thing that I do in the morning when I get up is I hydrate. I literally have a shaker bottle of water already next to my bed, ready to go. It's actually, sorry, it's in my office because the first thing I do is I get up, I go to my office, because that's kind of my room. It's the man cave. It's this room right here. Um, and so I have that water there, and I have packets of Liquid IV is the brand name that I use. I mix that up, and it's an electrolyte drink, and I drink that. That's the first thing that I do in the morning while I'm doing, just some basic stretching, just kind of waking up kind of things. Okay. And then I typically get interrupted by my feline friends. And so hydrating and feeding the cats, because I can kind of do both at the same time. Um, that is the kind of the first things that I do in the morning. Um, Obviously, there's the biological things that we do in the morning that are going to enter in here at some point, especially after hydrating, right? But then the next thing that I do is I actually spend some time. Um, it's called soaping, which has nothing to do with washing or being clean. Um, Study and plan. Okay, so soap, that's a personal practice for me, for Bible study. It stands for scripture, observation, application, and prayer. So I read some scripture, I write my observations on it, I detail how it applies to me, and then, I write out a little prayer. This is kind of where my journal comes in as well. It's one of the things that I do in my journal. And then study is I usually am reading through a book. This is in addition to usually a book that I'm listening to, but I purposefully go through a book. Usually I've listened to it first, but I'm going through a book very specifically that I've listened to because I've gone, there are some deeper topics in there that I need to spend more time on. And so I actually use it as a study guide. And I actually go through, I write notes, I highlight, I do almost as if you would do in a class and taking notes. And then lastly here is I plan. So I plan. And that's just some rough, has nothing to do with work. It has to do with more of the personal things that I want to get done that day, reviewing my personal goals, things like that. Then we have exercise. Okay. Now, the reason why it's in this order, I should point out, and I'll go ahead and even add it here. It's exercise and sunlight. Because I do wake up pretty early. I wake up at about 5 o'clock, 4:30 to 5 o'clock every morning. And so I actually hold off my exercise until after the sun has come up so that, and this is something I got from Andrew Huberman. If you haven't seen his podcasts and stuff, I suggest you check it out. Got a lot of interesting information, especially on sleep cycles and when you wake and when you should do certain things. Because you'll notice caffeine has not entered the picture yet. Neither has food. So exercise and sunlight, getting both of those at the same time. What they say is that the sunlight really helps with your circadian rhythms, helps you wake up and stay kind of awake and alert through the rest of the day. And I do believe it actually has worked for me. And then once I've exercised, this is shower and stuff like that. Because one of the things once I've done my walking and running, I don't like to sit down. I like to stay standing up, doing things so that I'm not getting lazy right away. And I hate to put it that way. Like that makes it sound bad. But I want to keep moving. I don't want my muscles to relax right away. I want them to relax gradually. And so shower has part to do with that. And I do in the mornings, I do a cold shower because that's been recommended as well and does seem to wake you up a little bit more. And then typically I'll have breakfast. and caffeine. And, a lot of people would probably have no problems doing this on their own. Me, I got to track it. Okay. I've got to have this now. Most of the time now, because I've been doing these index cards for probably about 6 months at this point. This one, I don't necessarily need the cards so much. Where the cards come into play is once I've established this is a habit, I can put them away. But there are a lot of times where because of life or because I want to introduce a new habit, I have to update these cards. And because it's a new habit, I go back to these cards and I'm using them every day to make sure that I'm doing step 1, step 2, step 3. Because again, like some of these things matter. The sunlight, the placing of that in a certain time makes a difference in the morning routine. And so it just helps for me to make sure that I'm keeping everything straight here. Okay, so that's morning routine. Let me get that one out of the way. Drag another one up here. And actually, probably just help to copy and paste this over. And this next one I call my workday startup. And we'll go ahead and delete these. And so in the workday startup, it really depends. And I wish I had my cards because now I'm going to have to remember these and I probably don't. Oh, and I have not been looking at the comments. I apologize, Degley. So Degley says, one morning routine that I've done ever since we started remote working was to shower and get ready as if I were going to the office. I cannot function in my pajamas or lounging. Yes. And that is one of the reasons why I shower right after exercising, is because it tends to, and I do, it's the shower and getting dressed. It's that whole routine of putting on work, right? And getting ready, getting you mentally prepared. And by the way, Degley, thank you for that, because it reminds me that one of the reasons why I do specifically a workday startup is that this is now my official shift from personal to work. Okay. And because just mentally, because of who I am and my personality, this helps me tremendously switch from personal to work. So in my workday startup, one of the first things I do is I do my planning for the day. And I'm also going to put in here calendar blocking, because this is more than just my to-do list, right? And there's a million ways to do that. And we'll get into that more in the productivity section. But calendar blocking, I actually did a fair amount of explanation of this on a podcast I did with MSP Business School that just came out last week. And in fact, somebody mentioned today that I should do a masterclass on calendar blocking, and that's actually not a bad idea. So I think I'm probably going to weave it in here somehow, make it a separate session. But because it's one of those things, if you need it, it is essential. Like, I would say that calendar blocking is one of the most important productivity tools that I've picked up. But I don't want to go too much into that because it will be a whole separate session. That really just sets me up for, and sorry, I should probably add this too, because this is a critical step. Review, plan, and calendar blocking, because reviewing is going through my to-do list from the day before, right? And all of my weekly and monthly goals. Okay, so I know where I'm headed. And then planning, what are the to-dos that I'm going to do today? And typically that includes a top 3 for me that are non-negotiables, right? Those are the 3 that I have to get done before I end my day. And then, of course, the calendar blocking piece. Now, once I have that piece done, I'm going to do inbox to 0. And this is a combination of physical as well as um, email. Okay. Most of this, I'll admit, right, these days is email. And that is getting all three of my inboxes to zero, which easier said than done. I do it with two. The personal email is kind of hard, but the other two are more critical anyway. So I get those two inboxes to zero. That also can sometimes put other to-dos into the plan. And so that's why it's kind of next, but it's also there's more priority in the things that are in that first step. So inbox to zero is the next one. And then I usually spend about 10 to 15 minutes on small, urgent tasks. Okay. Because I think that's, to me, that's getting a lot of those small ones out of the way kind of frees up my mind for being able to get on to the bigger things that I need to get done that day. And that's really, I have some other things on there, but I forget what they are at the moment. I really should have gotten those cards and brought them over. It doesn't have to be complicated, but this gives me concrete steps that I do every day that gets me to a specific place that I want to be when I'm starting my workday. And again, it gives me that mental trigger to make sure that I'm getting the things done that I want to get done. Okay. Next up, and this one's going to go real fast. Let me copy these over again. This is my midday break. And this is just for me to kind of stop working for usually about a half hour, 45 minutes. And this will include lunch. Okay. It will include specifically hydrating, because one of the things that I find is if I really get into work that I stop drinking, even though I may have water at my desk. Now this will be different. It'll just be water. It won't be any electrolytes or anything crazy like that. But I want to make sure, number one, that I'm drinking enough water. But number two, water and the food, it just helps the digestion thing. I'm kind of weird health-wise that way. So just making sure that I do that. And then the other part here is, and sometimes this is optional, is meditation. I find that meditating really gives me that mental kind of, it almost works like a nap. It's weird. And even just 5 minutes of meditation, or just breathing exercises. If you don't like the idea of meditation, do some breathing exercises. Take some full deep breaths, in for 1, out for 2, and repeat that 20 times or until you count to 20. And to me, that really substitutes for a nap. And then the next thing that I do is I try and get outside. 5-10 minutes, whatever it takes. Usually for me, it means walking down to the stop sign and back. Okay. And to me, it's somebody who has a problem with kind of sluggishness in the afternoon, that when the days when I actually do this are the days that I seem to not have that slowdown quite as much. And yes, Degley, really, it also has to do with getting away from my desk, out of the office. And one of the things, by the way, just a little side note on this, I have noticed that going outside helps with my eye strain, because what ends up happening is, even when you're in the house and you can look across the room, even if you have like a large great room like we do, where it's kitchen, living room combined and everything, you still don't focus as far as you do when you go outside. And that change of focus with your eyes, it's weird, but it really does help. I know. Okay. I promised that that one wouldn't be so long. So that's my midday. And then, you also have workday shutdown. Now, again, this is one of those things where it's a mental switch from my work day to my personal day. I do have it scheduled on the calendar. I have it scheduled at 6 p.m. because that's usually the latest that I'm having to do actual work stuff, except for Wednesday nights, obviously, because I'm doing this. And even though this is kind of fun, well, it's not kind of fun. It is fun, but it's also kind of work. But anyway, you guys understand what I mean, right? Okay. Anyway, the workday shutdown, this is about not only that transition from work to personal, but also just being able to end the day well so that you can start the next day well. And so this is kind of gathering up all of the inbox items for the day. And what I mean by this is actually less email when it comes to this, and all of the things that I've taken notes on in my journal and all of the action items, kind of putting those together. And a lot of times what'll happen there is I will spend 10 to 15 minutes again on small tasks, because as I gather those up, if I can do them in 10 or 15 minutes, then I want to get those out of the way so that they don't carry over to the next day. And then I want to finish any urgent items and get my inbox to 0 again. Okay. Inbox 0 is, to me, one, again, it's not as important as calendar blocking, but it's almost as important, because if I get my inbox to 0, I know that I have not missed anything. Now, there is a cheat code for this if you use it. Create a folder, or in Gmail, create a label for follow-up items. Okay, so that you can actually put those into a separate folder to go back to. Because I use a physical journal, I usually take those things and write them down in my physical journal instead. But again, it gets you to that place where you're not going to drop anything, because your inbox just doesn't just grow and grow and grow until everything is completely not findable anymore. And so it can be as simple as that, right? Making sure that you're not leaving anything critical undone. You're getting some of those small tasks done that you can get out of the way, and getting your inbox back to the point where it's at 0, because then you're starting the next day well. By the way, this usually takes me about 30 minutes. Okay. And Degley says, at the end of the day, there's the opportunity to start planning your next morning and modify your time blocking accordingly. Yes, I agree with that if it works in your circumstance. I tend to be a morning person, and so I do that time blocking piece in the morning. But yes, you could do it just as easily in the evening before you end. And Degley, I will say that, one of the differences between you and I is time zone, right? So because I'm Eastern and I have people in my company who are working well past the time that I'm going to end, things could show up on my calendar that I don't want to have already blocked for the next day. So for me personally, I don't time block until the next morning, so that if somebody in my organization needs to put something on my calendar for tomorrow, they can, before I've blocked it out completely. Okay. So again, just one of those little tactical differences, right? And then I don't even know if I need to go into this one. This one is going to be a lot like the morning routine. This is just the evening routine. And so this is just going to be mainly a lot of personal things, just the things that you do to end your day well, to, get yourself mentally, physically, spiritually prepared for the next day. So again, highly personal. And the reason we do this, okay, I'm going to go back to the reason we do this is so that you can build new habits into your routines and have an easy way of tracking it. And what I'll do is if I actually have a new habit that I'm incorporating into this and say it's part of my new morning routine, right? When I go to track that, which is actually our next thing, I'm actually going to list that here under my new habits. So I'll either list the new habit specifically, or I'll just say it's part of my morning routine. So am I following my morning routine 100%? Okay. And sometimes I'll even do that. Like I'll say, well, I did this, say there are 4 things on my morning routine. Well, I did 3 of them. So I did 75% today. I don't usually do that. I'm just saying you can. A lot of times this is just simply an X, a tick mark, whatever it is. Again, I'm using my physical journal to do this. So, it's going to be different for everybody. There are tracking apps for this. If one of the routines or one of the habits you want to get into is making sure that you're drinking, say, 3 liters of water a day, then, maybe, you're using an app for that. Again, I would just probably say, don't use apps because they're cool. Use it because it actually makes the process simpler for you. So anyway, usually what I do is I do these a month at a time, either a month at a time or a week at a time. I've gone back and forth and I find benefits and drawbacks to each. But typically I usually land on doing it monthly. And so I can fill that out every day of the month and I can have multiple habits that I'm trying to track with that. And I think that's probably all we need to do in terms of tracking. I think everybody kind of gets that. Track it where makes sense for you. Whatever you're using, use that. If you're using a physical notebook, if you want to use Excel, that's fine. Whatever works best for you. And then the last one is learning. And, a lot of us are in sales. So I thought this one would be funny. Always be closing. Also, always be learning. At this stage in my life, a lot of people that I know have kind of stopped learning. I see it all the time. And I'm like, there are new things not only being invented all the time, but life is changing all the time. I'm not doing the same things today that I was doing 6 months ago. My life has changed dramatically just in the past 2 weeks. Because we've had, one of our kids moved out. So life changes. You have to be learning things. And if you don't learn new things, you can't apply that learning to the things that are changing in your life. And I just think it's super important. I think reading and listening to books is probably one of the best ways to do that. Obviously, social media plays a role, but that one can be dangerous. So take it with a grain of salt. But my point is, there's always something new to learn because things are changing all the time. One of my favorite quotes is, "You never step in the same river twice." And that is absolutely true. All right. So what's coming next? What's coming next is going to be the productivity system. I'm ending this just about exactly where I wanted to tonight. One of my favorite ways is to use a bullet journal. And it's just, again, it's a physical journal, just like this one. Mine has dotted pages. It doesn't matter. It's whatever works for you. If you're not familiar with the bullet journal method, I'll probably drop some links to it later on in the group, or, actually I've got some some videos that I'm doing. So I'll probably drop it as part of those videos, and those will be posted everywhere. It's a simple way of tracking your day as well as the things you need to get done. It is, to me, absolute genius in terms of its simplicity. Now, do not, I warn you, you've been warned, do not just Google bullet journaling, because you will see these journals that are done by artists and people who have way too much time on their hands. I don't have time for that. So you can see in this image, this is very simple. In fact, they have their entire month laid out with the big things that are happening on those days. You can also use this to journal the big things that happened on those days. I typically use it for that as well. And then you have these bulleted lists and these different symbols that you use that are very easy. There's only a couple of them to define the status or the disposition of those items. Okay. And by the way, you can do this digitally. I'm going to show you a way to do this digitally. I personally have done this digitally because one of the drawbacks to a physical notebook is it is only in one place. Doing it digitally on your iPad, on your phone, on your computer, the program I used was GoodNotes, you have the ability to access it from anywhere. And that is a big plus. The problem is it just didn't work well for me. So we're going to be getting into that probably, I would say 2 or 3 weeks from now is when we'll do the one on how I take now my routines and my goals. How do I put that into a productivity system of getting these things actually done? And when I talk about a productivity system, I'm talking about collecting, processing, planning, and doing 4 simple things to move everything forward and to keep things organized. So we're going to be doing that in a couple of weeks. If you have any questions in the meantime, please go ahead. Don't hesitate to ask. We are about 5 minutes till the end of the hour. Let me go ahead and take this off of the stage. There we go. Do appreciate you being here tonight. Degley, thank you for your input as always. And, a lot of cool things happening around here. So make sure that you're either plugged into the group or you're following the LinkedIn page. Those are probably the 2 best social media aspects to follow us on in terms of getting all of the information as to what we're doing as a group. And then also subscribe to the YouTube channel. And actually, I probably should say, I really do appreciate the fact that we have reached 2,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So if you're watching us there, thank you very much. And just looking forward to doing more of this. If you have more time and you are not done with your social media video watching for the evening, I encourage you to go check out Marvin B's podcast, the IT Business Podcast. Great podcast always from one of my favorite people in this industry. So go ahead and check that out. Again, if you have any questions about the self-discipline, the productivity piece, I've done a lot of research, a lot of failing, to be quite honest, to figure out what worked for me. So maybe I can help you as well. Let me know. You can reach out to me on any of the social media platforms, and I will get back to you. But anyway, until next time, have a great evening, have a great week, and I'll see you in the next one.